Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for joining me and getting the digest of what's going on in Illinois. Some of the big headlines: former Chicago Alderman Ed Burke found guilty earlier this year and sentenced yesterday to 2 years in prison and a $2 million fine. And that's just one of the top headlines you'll see at thecentersquare.com, where Ed Burke, former Chicago alderman and also a husband of former Illinois Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court Ann Burke, found guilty earlier this year, but charged with corruption, and the judge sentencing him to 2 years with a $2 million fine. Federal prosecutors said that Burke corruptly sought to steer tax appeals work to his private law firm by pressuring developers to essentially take on his law firm. And this impacted companies like Benny's Beverage Depot or Burger King that were looking to set up in his district. And some of the reaction coming in, including from former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who made the appeal, saying that on X, over decades, Ed Burke caused real harm to people and communities by abusing the power he's amassed and by monetizing his public service positions. He should be grateful that his sentence wasn't longer. It certainly could have been, justifiably so. So that's the former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot discussing that. Even the Better Government Association putting out a statement saying that Burke's light sentence makes clear the need for reform. The Better Government Association says former Chicago Alderman Ed Burke, sentenced to 2 years in prison, $2 million fine, 13 charges, including racketeering, conspiracy, extortion, and bribery. The sentence is relatively light one, sparing Burke the lengthy prison stay of up to 12 and a half years requested by federal prosecutors. Federal sentencing guidelines, which are not mandatory, called for between 78 and 97 months based on the financial cost of his crimes, according to the presiding judge in that case. And goes on to say that the defense had requested between 4 and 5 years in prison. In response to the sentencing, Better Government Association President David Greising said that today's light sentence calls into question the principle of equality before the law. So you can obviously see some people saying the sentence was pretty light. Both the Better Government Association and former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot reacting to that. So that's just some of what's going on. You'll hear a lot of talk about that throughout the day today. But you've also got some other headlines to talk about, including the November election coming up. Yes, former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden are set to debate Thursday on CNN. But those may not be the only choices for you in Illinois. If you go to the Illinois State Board of Elections website, you'll see that some of the independent and third-party candidates have filed. You've got Libertarian Party candidates that have filed, Constitution Party of Illinois, Green Party candidates that have filed, Working Class Party being filed for members of Congress and so on. So whether or not these independent candidates are going to make it onto the November ballot, we shall see. But that's just something else that's in the headlines this morning, and you'll be able to read more about that throughout the day. But go to thecentersquare.com, where you can read some of the other headlines that we'll go over, including an Illinois trade company saying that consumers are going to be paying more for Biden's tariffs on Chinese goods. So the issue of tariffs, obviously a presidential, policy point, and even former President Donald Trump has talked about tariffs. But what President Joe Biden has announced, the administration saying that they're going to put a variety of tariffs on Chinese imports such as steel and aluminum, semiconductors, batteries, and medical equipment. Even the U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, said during a news brief that Biden's new tariffs are aimed at protecting American-made electric vehicles, solar energy products, and semiconductors for so-called excess Chinese capacity. So China has too much capacity in this marketplace. But you've got some that are pointing out this is going to be bad for consumers. You've got the CEO, the performance manager, the National Operations Performance Manager with Customs Brokerage at OEC Group in Chicago, announcing that it's going to cost consumers more. He said that even though the administration said the tariffs are for China, in the end, 25% tariffs are going to be paid by importers who import the products, and the cost is just going to be passed down to consumers. So clearly, the idea of tariffs, it's kind of the same thing you also hear about tax increases in general on businesses. The business typically is going to push that down to the consumer. So you can read more about that story at thecentersquare.com. Also, some news about a bunch of different bills on the governor's desk. He's got more than 450 different bills on his desk, I believe, last time I checked. And he does have a bill signing ceremony today that he's going to be advancing. So that is obviously going to be something to watch as well. We'll talk about that in the next segment here with Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for taking time with us this morning. And more coming up here with the Center Square. And be sure to like and subscribe so you can stay updated with us daily here on YouTube. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to be signing Senate Bill 1 today. It's just one of more than 400 pieces of legislation on his desk. And what exactly does it do? Well, it creates a new state agency that's expected to initially cost $14 million more in the state budget. And then the costs could grow even more once the entirety of the new state agency is implemented over several years. It is Illinois in Focus. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network so you can stay updated with Illinois in Focus daily as we give you the headlines that you need to know to get your day going. So let's talk about Senate Bill 1. What exactly is it? It is a measure that Governor J.B. Pritzker several months ago, I think late last year, he actually proposed having an independent state agency that deals with early childhood development. And this would take services from a variety of other already existing state agencies and have them all into one state agency with greater oversight, greater efficiencies, possible savings. Some people, though, don't see it that way and are worried that creating a new state agency could create even more bloat within government. But let's go back to the record here and watch what happened on the Senate floor when this came up, and a little bit more of an explanation from State Senator Kimberly Lightford, who is the majority leader of the Democrats in the Illinois Senate.
A place where we have the proposal to unite all of our state early childhood services into one new state agency titled the Department of Early Childhood. Uniting early childhood services in Illinois can make access to services simple, better, and more fair for families with young children and make more efficient use of state resources. Currently, most early childhood programs are split across 3 state agencies. We have programs in the Department of Human Services, at the Illinois State Board of Education, and at the Department of Children and Family Services. In this effort, we are going to ensure that this legislation does not substantially change early childhood programs or service delivery at this point, and we're kind of slow walking it to make sure the transfer works well. So we create this department effective July 1 of 24. We transfer all statutory authority to administer the early childhood programs from the 3 previous agencies I mentioned beginning July 1 of 26. And we're requiring the new Department of Early Childhood to designate a body by July 1 of 26 to advise the department on an ongoing basis, ensuring its functions are transparent, operates with a commitment to racial equity, and devotes attention to data collection and timely public reporting.
So again, that's Kimberly Lightford. She is the majority leader in the Illinois Senate, and the measure did get support from Republicans in the Senate. It passed unanimously back in April. Senate Bill 1 creating a new Department of Early Childhood. The governor expected to sign this bill today with a signing ceremony up in Chicago this afternoon. Here is Republican State Senator Tom Bennett talking about the measure and how he says that it could really bring about some efficiencies for taxpayers with greater oversight of agencies like the Department of Children and Family Services, especially with the child care licensing component that's going to be moving out of DCFS, which has been troubled for years, into a standalone state agency. Here's State Senator Tom Bennett.
$4 billion that is now in our different agencies, bringing together under one roof, will hopefully bring together efficiencies and help this move forward. I know several senators over the years have gotten calls from folks that are trying to start daycare centers, and the frustration of trying to provide information has just been amazing. And I'm hoping that this will help be a major step forward as we come together and start to put the pieces together in one place. I ask for an aye vote.
So clearly the measure in the Senate passed unanimously, and then it went to the House. There was more pushback in the House, where State Representative Blaine Wilhauer raised the question about creating yet another state agency within state governments.
What we're doing here, guys, is we're creating a massive bureaucracy. We have no idea what it's going to cost the taxpayers. We're not exactly sure what we're going to do. Apparently, we have to pass this bill to be able to see what it actually does at the end of the day. And, you know, I just think that it is inappropriate to create an entire government bureaucracy without knowing those important things, especially when there's nothing keeping this from happening right now. I don't think anywhere in the history of government, especially in the history of government in the state of Illinois, have we created a bureaucracy, especially massive bureaucracy, and it worked out well for the taxpayers at the end of the day.
So Wilhauer obviously raising questions about creating yet another state agency. Democratic State Representative Will Davis on the House floor back in May, he said that this measure he had questions about and maybe some initial opposition, but in the long run he came to the term that he likes this measure.
I anticipate that we may even see savings in this. Right now we're spending money in four different agencies. So as we start to consolidate this, you know, you'll have one director that obviously will be a state employee, and that director will have, you know, some other people underneath them working to make this happen. But again, when you're spending money in 4 different places and you have the opportunity to bring it possibly under one roof, and spend it in that one way, I think there are some good things that come out of this.
So State Representative Stephen Reich, a Republican from Woodstock, he pushed back on the idea of a new state agency, but he also highlights, and he's been one to be critical of the Department of Children and Family Services for quite some time, especially when it comes to their handling of daycare licensing. And how some daycare licensing provisions by rule during the COVID-19 pandemic really actually helped out the daycares that were licensed, dealing with allowing for certain people with a level of education being able to watch over children for a longer period of time. With the staff crunch at a lot of DCFS licensed daycares, their rulemaking changed that and really made their employment situation worse, limiting who could watch over children for a certain set number of hours a day. The Joint Committee on Administrative Rules really pushed back on DCFS on this issue, and one of those that did that regularly was State Representative Stephen Reich. So on the House floor last month when this measure passed, again, Senate Bill 1 on the governor's desk, he's going to sign it today, expected he'll sign it today. And we'll hear what the governor has to say about that, and we'll share that with you tomorrow with Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But here's Stephen Reich from last month on this issue.
Every government agency exists to expand its authority and expand its budget. As H.L. Mencken said, the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamoring for safety by creating a series of hobgoblins, most of them imaginary.
Now, Democrats came back and said there were no hobgoblins in this bill, and it's just merely a way to try to build even more efficiency. But it did have bipartisan support in both chambers. It's on the governor's desk. He is going to sign it today. It's expected he'll sign it today. But listen, looking at the report of bills on the governor's desk, we're going to have a busy summer of reviewing a lot of the legislation that the governor has to enact, or or to veto or to modify. But I'm just scrolling through here the hundreds of bills that the governor has on his desk, and I'll just scroll down all to the bottom to get to the cumulative, which is 445 bills on the governor's desk. I think there's still some measures that have yet to be sent, but he has signed a handful in the past couple of weeks. So it's going to be a busy time this summer with a lot of bills being announced to be signed. And one thing we'll do here with Illinois in Focus daily is to give you both sides of the conversation of this legislation impacting you here in the state of Illinois. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us each and every weekday morning for Illinois in Focus Daily, and you will definitely be informed to start your day. So greatly appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. I'm still working out some of the bugs. We'll get it. The Illinois legislature could move forward with a measure enhancing the state's red flag laws when they come back after the November election, with some saying that recent Illinois Supreme Court or U.S. Supreme Court ruling, I should say, enhanced the effectiveness of a proposed measure known as Karina's bill. That, of course, is from State Representative Maura Hirschauer, who advanced this legislation by filing it, but then pushed for it, but it never really advanced. And a lot of people were waiting on the U.S. Supreme Court to make a decision in a case dealing with restraining orders and whether an individual can be restrained from having a firearm if they're the subject of an order of protection, a domestic violence order of protection. So let's tackle that now here with Illinois in Focus. I'm Greg Bishop, and you can catch this each and every weekday morning with Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for America's Talking Network on YouTube, where soon Bishop on Air, where we're simulcasting, will only be on America's Talking Network with Illinois in Focus Daily. But let's get to this issue here with the U.S. Supreme Court rulings in a couple of landmark cases. One dealing with the issue of Karina's bill that State Representative Maura Hirschauer says is bolstered by the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in Rahimi. So go to the centersquare.com where you can see the article, Recent U.S. Supreme Court Rulings Could Impact Illinois Gun Laws. And we'll get down to the bottom here, where in the Rahimi case decided Friday, the majority opinion said those with domestic violence orders of protection can be prohibited from possessing firearms. The court held when an individual has been found by a court to pose a credible threat to the physical safety of another, that individual may be temporarily disarmed consistent with the Second Amendment. So Illinois State Representative Maura Hirschauer, a Democrat from Batavia, she said that ruling bolsters the need for her bill, Karina's bill, that requires courts to order warrants for law enforcement to confiscate firearms from subjects of orders of protection. Part of her statement says, quote, while this ruling is a great relief for survivors of gender-based violence, the federal protections affirmed today merely preserve the status quo. And for tens of thousands of women and families, it's clear that that is not enough. She goes on to say, quote, we now know without question what we can do more, and we must. Here in Illinois, she said, we should move forward by enacting Karina's bill, which will provide clear guidance for getting guns out of the hands of abusers and ensure those weapons are removed sooner all within a framework that justices have now overwhelmingly endorsed. So that's the statement from Maura Hirschauer about the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Rahimi, dealing with an individual who had orders of protection against him. But when I connected with Ed Sullivan with the Illinois State Rifle Association, he's a lobbyist, he reacted to the push for Karina's bill. Here's some of what he had to share with me yesterday.
Saw that. Now, for Illinois, that doesn't at this point affect Illinois. Saw that. Now, for Illinois, that doesn't. So, one of the things under the Rahimi case is a person, a defendant must have received actual notice of an opportunity to be heard before the order was entered. And so, due process. Illinois State Rifle Association has consistently, on all the different bills that have come out, said, listen, you can't take away someone's Second Amendment rights without due process. And so parts of the Katrina's law will have to be altered because they're going to have to give them due process before they can take a firearm away. And so what are we talking about? Under the red flag laws in Illinois, they have what's called ex parte hearings. Ex parte hearing is where you can charge a defendant without them knowing about it and without them being present and the ability to bring a lawyer to argue their case. And so right off the bat, it would seem under Rahimi that the red flag ex parte part of the statute needs to go away. And so under the Katrina laws, same thing. You're going to have to give someone their day in court before you can act. But beyond that, there's a couple other things in Illinois law that we think are now on life support. Think of times where under bond orders or bond conditions for someone that gets a DUI where they say, well, you have to turn in your firearms. Well, how do you force someone to turn their firearms under a bond condition when they've never been to court? And so the other portion that I think we really need to take a look at is clear and present danger laws. And so if a police department or a school district signs a complaint on a clear and present danger for somebody, how do you then restrict their gun rights if they have not been, if they've not had their day in court? And so as it relates to your direct question on Rahimi, listen, we don't think truly dangerous people that have had their due process should have access to firearms as well. And so we have been talking to them, and we've, one of the reasons Katrina's law has not moved forward is because of our argument that you need to wait for Rahimi to take place. All right. Well, now we have guidance from the U.S. Supreme Court, and we can go and have this discussion about, okay, if you're going to take them away, well, where's the probable cause hearing? Where's the hearing with the defendant in court? And so they're going to have to adjust the bill as written for Katrina's law.
So the Illinois Sheriff's Association still opposes Karina's bill, and just getting that confirmation from their executive director yesterday because of the questions of manpower and having a large number of orders of protection that could possibly impact law enforcement having to go out and enforce these warrants, to execute these search warrants to confiscate firearms, let alone, even Governor J.B. Pritzker has raised question about this as well, and we'll have to find those archives as this conversation continues to evolve after the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in Rahimi dealing with red flag laws. Even the governor has raised questions about the safety of law enforcement going to execute such types of search warrants. Listen, we had an incident here in Illinois where a couple of sheriff's deputies up north were shot when they were essentially breaching a home where a suspect was armed, and their parent had called and said that the individual was possibly harmful to themselves and others, and law enforcement breached the home and shots were fired, and you've seen that story. That was last week. Or was it the week before? I was off last week. Clearly, there's some questions about the safety and security. So we'll be monitoring what happens with Karina's bill in the future. But when it comes to the Bumpstock ban that the U.S. Supreme Court overturned last week, Illinois State Rifle Association lobbyist Ed Sullivan reacted to what that means for the state of Illinois.
Now, for Illinois, that doesn't at this point affect Illinois, because under the Protect Illinois Communities Act, where the state banned commonly used firearms, semi-automatic firearms, they also included a provision that banned devices that increase the rate of fire. And so that would be bump stocks and switches that you could put into handguns. And so as we stand today, bump stocks in Illinois are banned. Now, we do have a court case, multiple court cases before the Supreme Court that we're hoping that they'll take in the next 2 weeks. If the Supreme Court would declare that unconstitutional, then bump stocks would be back in play for Illinois.
So you've got the U.S. Supreme Court that could take up Illinois' gun and magazine ban, while it's still in the Southern District of Illinois federal courts with a scheduled bench trial for September 16th. Yesterday, when we reviewed this, the U.S. Supreme Court hadn't really had much other scheduled, but now they have added to their schedule, including opinions to be released on the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. But those are non-argument days when opinions will be released. The day that those looking to see if the Supreme Court will announce to take up the state's gun and magazine ban challenge on preliminary grounds. Those are the order list issuance days. We had one on Monday, and nothing was listed for the Illinois cases. And it looks like they don't have anything else scheduled for July, August, or even into September. So clearly, at least as of right now, it looks like the action in the challenge against Illinois' gun and magazine ban is going to be in the Southern District of Illinois, not on preliminary grounds, on the merits. So we'll be watching that for you as well. But one thing that the bump stock ban case, where the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the bump stock ban, you had the dissenting justices, the liberal justices, use language in there when they were describing what preempted what prompted the ban on bump stocks that the ATF enforced under the Trump administration, and that was the 2017 Las Vegas shooting, where the liberal justices wrote in their dissent that these bump stock devices were attached to the firearms that are commonly available, and they used the term commonly available firearms. Sullivan says that term commonly available is going to be beneficial to those arguing against the banning of certain types of firearms.
Yeah, and so the bright spot for us is when you have the liberal justices using language like you just said, commonly used firearms. We think that is definitely something that will affect our challenge to the PICA law. They're using our language. They're using exactly what we've been saying the whole time. And so we think that signals something that will be favorable to us for sure.
So we'll be watching, see what happens. Of course, we'll monitor any updates from the U.S. Supreme Court if they take the case on preliminary grounds. If they don't, then it means on the merits, they're moving forward with the challenge against Illinois' gun and magazine ban that was enacted back in January of 2023. All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for daily updates with America's Talking Network and the Center Square. Again, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. All right, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning with Illinois in Focus Daily.